Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3's Black Ice 10.41, I believe this is. And we are being pushed back steadily on the Eastern Front. We have gotten rid of this one beachhead here, and we are battling out this beachhead here. Yep, you're going on the offensive. So are you. And we're dealing with the torch landings. Nope, they're being, no, did we? Nope, we've been retreating back. Okay. Oh boy, well. Why are we retreating? We're in so good shape. Damn Iranians. They're pushing their fleets back, it looks, or their subs back. Oh good, we won up here. Oh great, our invasion worked. Our invasion worked. So let's start sending some of these forces this way to face off with. Yeah, well, let's send all of these because we're going to have a bunch more coming here. We're going to they're all being attacked. I don't know. You guys get into it. Memka. Get your parachute unit in there. And we've won in Harlem. Okay, well, now we're going to Allied objectives. No longer have Italy. Allied objective to here. And where was the other one? There was, I think I gave two. Oh, here in Rotterdam. Okay, guys, you can go home. Go back to the Mediterranean. And no, I haven't called Italy into here yet. I was going to see if they did it on their own or if we needed help. Okay, let's find a closer, higher authority. Order back. Yeah, West here, shall. Okay, shall's good. Yeah. Okay, that gets all these guys into better organization levels. You know, and mentioning, talking to Tink, and not able to get into Hoi 3. And I totally understand that. It's a complicated game. Takes a long time. But, and it may not look at this, and of course I take a lot of time to do this, pause and talk to you, so that's absolutely true. But I very much think that I'm playing this at light speed. If I were playing on my own, it's just a detailed pleasure for me to play this game. You know, just talking about like micromanaging also infrastructure. And yeah, that's not what I want to build and worry about. But it just, all the little details, just slow down, plan out operations, deal with this stuff. Now, like something I would like is the air war much more automated, then I don't want to have to deal with. So there's definitely areas that I don't want to have to deal too much with, for sure. But I really like that sort of an idea. Oh, we've retaken, or well, we've secured that. That is good. So it's the, I don't know that, you know, for you, whoever you are watching out there, I don't know, you know, if that's the type of game you want to play, where you lovingly build up panzer corps and organize them up and operate them in different fields. And it's a grand strategy game, so obviously it's big. Okay, so we've got that stopped here. But yeah, so I totally get that it may not be for everyone. We're going to leave this light infantry unit here because it's in the mountains and it's holding across the river here, so it's not going to be attacked too well, and it does have anti-tank. We're going to move this infantry division up here to support yes, Niagara. And so this is probably very much the game for you, because it is a good game. I've yet, quite honestly, if you're looking for, and I've not played World in Flames, which is a great old game. They do have a computerized version of it now. It's very detailed, but there's no AI for it, so you can only play it against other players. But there is, and that's the only thing that even comes close, in my opinion, to a grand strategy game with this much detail. Even, you know, Hoi 4 comes close in many ways, but just doesn't quite make it for me. All right, so you know, depends on what you want to do with units. Okay, well, let's put you on board. Mountain units are reasonably good at naval invasions. No, I don't think I have enough air units to try to drop you, so we're going to turn you into a type of rates as well. And Jaeger units can be, okay, well, they're full. Okay, well, we've filled up this. We're going to try to do it's too far away. Okay, so let's look at supply levels. Okay, we're getting supply into here. I'm gonna hope this is close enough, so let's just rebase to here. Oh, well, they're gonna have to come back. Oh no, well, let's cancel that. Let's rebase to here, and we'll do a naval invasion from here down into there. That should be able to do it. This is just a command element. I don't know what's happened to the rest of the forces here. There should I think have been more, but I don't know. Those are off. Money shortage imminent. Okay, now oh, what the hell? I'm gonna deal with this. Okay, okay, I totally disagree with this money thing. Hate me if you want to, but M-O-N-E-Y. Yeah, we're gonna go with 4,000. Hopefully that effect will go away from us. Totally disagree with this money thing, the way they've done it. We lost over here. Oh, they're pushing in somewhere. Okay. Division shattered. So I think our Other units have made it here, have they? Yes, here. Okay, oh, yeah. That's where I sent them. Okay, so these guys come back to Sutton. Yeah, just for those watching who haven't watched all the stuff before, I see money in Hearts of Iron 3 purely as a means of international exchange to buy and sell things, you know, and it can be, you know, primarily, obviously, it's, you know, resources, but you can set it up for other stuff. I have a bunch of events that cost money, but they're all things like, pay for spies to go in some other country. So you're giving them some money so that the spies can operate. Or, oh, hey, support this political party in this other country. Well, you need to give them money to support, you know, and money in not in your currency, you know, in their currency. So, for me, the money is an international expense, not a national one. So I just fundamentally disagree with their use of money. So the great bulk of their use of money in those situations are removed with TRE. So I do not feel bad about quote unquote cheating by giving myself all of that. Okay, well, let's put you on board ships. Let's put you on board ships. I know there's some in the north. And then let's see if we can get ship. And you come down, transport down to here. Back, fine. We've lost out here. Wow. There is. Oh, is that the unit that shattered, maybe? Flieger Division. That's the unit that shattered out here. Okay, that's why we lost. Oh boy. 7th Flieger. Well, let's send them down here. That may be the fastest way back to Persia if we're going to keep our airborne command operating down here. Well, we'll see how that works. How these guys are going after the partisans. You're attached to the command up there, so let's attach you over here. Yeah, I should have organized. And you know, I do enjoy organizing up these forces, but I just don't properly with the videos. Just don't take the time. You're here now, so you join the attack. See, is there a... Yeah. Where to? There we go. Money. Okay, we've lost the effects. Very good. And, you know, I may be still buying some resources or something here, but I really don't need to be. So money is not an issue. Okay. No, I don't want this up. Money in World War II. It was a very, very important thing. Prior to the start of World War II, this is sort of the money talk, and I'm going to try to keep this fairly short compared to some of my talks on it. But prior to the start of World War II, Germany had serious money problems. But its primary money problems were dealing with foreign money problems, if you will. There were serious limitations on how much money a German citizen could take out of Germany. So if you were going to say, oh, I'm going to go for a 10-day holiday in France, basically you had to go as cheap as possible, not because of how much money you had in Germany, but how much money the government was going to let you have. Because you're going to go out for 10 days? Okay. You can take out, I don't know, 200 Reichsmarks or something like that. So you can spend 20 Reichsmarks a day or whatever equivalency, and you would get that in exchange. And that was sort of the amount that you could take out. And they monitored every single banking transaction, probably everywhere in Germany, but definitely everyone's going in and out. And so you had to get permission, like if you wanted to buy rubber, because all rubber is imported. Now I'm not talking synthetic rubber. They were developing that, but all natural rubber is imported. So, and they wanted people to have rubber, but they only had so much US dollars, so much British pounds, French francs, or gold or silver, or some other medium of exchange that the world at large was going to take. They didn't have lots of it, they had some. And they had to they chose to keep paying off their debts regarding, to some degree, not entirely, because the U.S. does withdraw its ambassador at one time from Germany over lack of paying off post-World War I debts. Again, what happens is Germany loses this thing called World War I. The winners say, you got to give us money, a lot of it. Germany is in no place to say anything but yes. Germany doesn't have the money. The U.S. has the money, so the U.S. loans the money to Germany. This is all keeping the stuff short. Loans a lot of the money that Germany needs to pay off the war reparations. And then, of course, the U.S. wants its money back, over time. Not right away. It's a loan. It's meant to be paid back over time. And so, and the loan is not paid back in Deutschmarks or Reichsmarks or whatever the money was called during the Weimar period. I don't quite know for sure, quite honestly. But it's to be paid back in US dollars over time. Germany is having trouble getting enough US dollars to pay it back, even before the Nazis come into power. And so, they can't just, hello, Omar, how you doing? So they just can't print the money to pay off their international debt. Okay, so money is a critical thing for Germany. And if we were talking about pre-war, and like I say, for TRE, I've disabled a bunch of the internal money needs for all the nations, not just Germany. It's equally gone for everybody, like to pay for things internally. Because I'm looking at that as the ability to print money, and we could get into a lot of the details of what Schacht and others, once they're in charge and actually do manage the money reasonably well. TIK is Austrian economics kind of person, and I do like his talk, so I don't fully agree with him, but I generally think he's on the right track. Long term, it's a different issue than short term. So yes, money is incredibly important before the war. Money is incredibly important in the early days of the war, particularly for the Western Allies, because part of France and Britain's military industrial might is located here in the United States. That's how it was in World War I. That's how it's starting to shape up in World War II. And in the beginning days of the war, both France and Britain need to pay for things, as in spend money on stuff. And now, particularly the British pound was considered strong. And this is prior to the Battle of France. So a lot of companies, individuals, whatever, would be happy to be paid in British pounds, so long as the British pounds are thought to be strong and they weren't inflating them. Basically, more or less gold backed, but not entirely. But they also want US dollars and gold and whatnot. So like early on, Britain buys a lot of the available stock of Thompson submachine guns. Now that's after the Battle of France, and I think they go for modern day adjusted inflation $1,000+ a submachine gun, where modern day adjusted inflation it's like $20 or something for a Sten gun that they later build on their own. So these are expensive submachine guns, and they were always, Thompson's guns were expensive. Hello, Yoshihisa. How you doing? Shimazu. Good to have you here live with me. And so Britain needs to come up with money to buy stuff internationally. And so that's very important. Britain, I don't know if it's still on the gold standard. Now America goes off the gold standard. So although, do understand, well, very good. Do understand that during the FDR administration, they confiscate all gold in the United States that isn't specifically jewelry. So all gold bullion, all gold coins, they confiscate it all. They pass laws and they confiscate it. So anybody holding gold bullion or holding gold coins is doing so illegally. And many people do, but you cannot use that, and so they, as a means of exchange. So the U.S. government has in the past, and very well may in the future, confiscate something like all gold. My father thinks they're going to try to outlaw or confiscate all Bitcoin. I don't think blockchain works in such a way in which they would be able to, but that's another matter. I mean, as a practical source, not that they could pass all kinds of laws if they want to. So money early on, before the war, early war, has a very big importance. But if you've noted everything I've said, all of its importance before and during the war. Importance, not, yes, Britain is paying its soldiers in British pounds. They don't want the British pound to become, they don't want to inflate it by just printing a whole lot of it and then other people in the world not wanting to take it as a, means of exchange. So yeah, they do have a situation of, deficits and worrying about paying their soldiers and their sailors, but it's not the big concern. Once the war is going, prior to the war getting going, yes, it's a concern, but it's not like, damn, if we just had more British pounds, we could draft some more soldiers or sailors, but no, we can't pay them, so we can't draft them. That's never an issue. I'm not saying it's not something that some bankers and finance clerks somewhere aren't, sweating bullets over figuring out all the the elements of it, but it's not something that is being thought of either at a grand strategic level, which is, sort of at this level, or even at sort of a, local strategy level, where you're moving your divisions. They're not worrying about, hello, Fat Franco, how you doing? They're not worrying about, do we have enough money for the gasoline? No, they're worrying about, do we have gasoline, in what, the division in the theater, or grand strategically. Do we have the gasoline? Do we have the means to transport it? That's what they're worried about, not paying for it once the war gets started. And, if they don't have it and they got to buy it internationally, yeah, they're worried about that part of it. But if they have it, whether it's gasoline or the oil. If they control Iraq, and they later, Britain invades, and mostly they're the ones that are securing the Iranian oil. The Soviet Union is just sort of securing the northern, I don't know, third or half, however you want to, of the country, more as a strategic option for Lend-Lease supplies. So if they control the internal elements of getting the oil and then have enough refineries to turn it into gasoline, they're not worrying about buying it. Now, they do end up needing to buy stuff just for various reasons from the U.S. But, so that's before and mid-war, or early war. Now, by mid-war, we have the situation is that the U.S. is starting to go from, cash and carry, because that was actually what it was called, cash and carry. We're neutral, but we'll sell to people, but you've got to show up with cash, and you have to carry it out, okay? So that was part of it, and that's why the term cash and carry was used. So in theory, Italy could send a ship to America and buy a bunch of weapons and sail it back to, in theory, to Italy. But yeah, things like the Straits of Gibraltar and what were keeping it from happening, and all the British fleets in the North Sea were keeping Germany from cash and carry. Now, Japan had its embargoes in the U.S. and placed on it because of what it was doing in China, and that's a whole nother story. But, oh, hello, IKB. Paying sailors, darn. Lot gets pressed into service and the payment is issued for later British tradition. Yeah, definitely 18th century, they were periodically paid off, in like every 6 months or something, or at the end of a commission. You're absolutely right, Tinky. I don't know. I think they were getting regular pay, though low pay. And maybe even script, but I don't know about that. The U.S., well, that's another whole story about script. The U.S. tries to control soldiers in the theater, so they don't want to give them U.S. dollars. They want to give them script that could later be exchanged for U.S. dollars, but that's another whole story. We're not going to get there. Laws that are not or cannot be enforced are worthless. They are worthless and counterproductive because they show the state is incapable of doing its duties. Imagine that financial minister told Churchill that he needed to cut down on his war expenses in 1940 because it was too expensive. Exactly, beam slam. So now that doesn't mean finance ministers didn't have real jobs, but you can't tell Churchill to stop dropping bombs because they can't afford new bombs or whatever. Or, hey, yeah, we don't have the fuel to fly we can't pay for the fuel to fly the fighters in the Battle of Britain. No, we may not have it physically. If they have it, they're going to somehow secure it. So this is how the U.S. pretends to stay neutral in that cash and carry, that if Germany could show up, we'll sell you weapons or resources or whatever else. Or Italy, if they could show up, we'll sell resources, or theoretically Hungary or whoever that's in the war in the Axis, we would theoretically do it. And so Britain, or France, until France is knocked out, is cash and carry. And this is carried on to the point, and they even sort of do it and makes it in some of the movies, is somewhere, I'm not sure where, along the U.S.-Canada border, they would fly the aircraft that the U.S. were making to in an airfield nearby the border, and then they would taxi or tow the aircraft up to the edge of the border. It wasn't where there's a river, it was a place where there wasn't, literally up to the border, and then park the aircraft literally right on the border, and then somebody from the British purchasing authorities or Canadians or whatever would literally walk across the painted line in the road, hook a hook onto the aircraft, and tow it, pull, drag, whatever you want to call it, the aircraft across the border into Canada. so that it wasn't the U.S. delivering war materials, particularly. Not so much, they weren't worried about like delivering steel or a resource into Canada. They were, those trains were going back and forth. But the idea of a weapon, that they didn't want to be seen as delivering it to a combatant. So I'm not saying they didn't have trains with rifles going across the border, but they were sort of making an ongoing show of turning over, and there was only, 10 or 20 aircraft a day. So it wasn't like they were doing a huge number of stuff, but they were towing these aircraft across the border to show that, oh, no, we're not flying them into Canada. The U.S. is not delivering them to a combatant. They're either showing up with their ships in our ports and we're loading them onto the ships and the ships go away, or they are, carrying it one method or another across the border without our assistance. What is the green area in England? Okay, I can get to that in a moment here. I swear it fell out of the truck, Mr. Hitler. Yes. Nazca, you're right. So, that's early on. But once you start getting to lend, lease, and beyond, and including just more and more as the Axis is losing, but an exchanging of resources, money is no longer the issue. In the United States, it's not do we have the money? Now, the negative consequences, and I've also the total war, no, not total war, not total war. The other guys, not Black Ice, not Total War, World Ablaze and Hoi 4, Uncharted. I've talked to him a bit about money and whatnot, and he is much more on the TIK side. He has a lot of inflationary type things built into his mod that I disagree with the severity at the time. Notice what I said, at the time. What the U.S. does is it moves to for the richest people, but also for a lot of other people. They increase the amount of taxes up to about 90%. Now, you're not necessarily making, $1,000, which was a lot of money. When you could buy a house in a suburb for like $4,000, $1,000 a year isn't a lot of money. Or it is a significant amount of money. It isn't. You're not poor at making $1,000 a year. But it's not like you're making $1,000 a year, they're taking all but $100. No, it's once you get to let's go over $50,000. Any money you make over $50,000 per year, or whatever the amount was, don't quote me on these exact amounts, that money is taxed at 90%. So it's almost, or 100,000 or wherever it was. And you slice down, and then at 40, money at over 40,000 is taxed at 75%. And it's sort of in a way. So it's higher than that, but it's what levels it's taxed at. They're taxing huge amounts of money, and they're also issuing war bonds, which are trying to pull money out of the system into the government to be able to pay for this thing. Well, this goes until the 1960s. Until it's JFK that reduces these super high tax rates, because they are taking the effects of World War II, the monetary effects of World War II, and they continue I think there's still some effects to this day, paying off loans and whatnot. But they definitely go into the 60s and the 70s, paying off governmental type debts that were incurred during World War II, even by the victors. So, yes, there's a lot of bad things happen with the debt spendings and all the stuff that's going on. Thank you so much, Arno. So you have a lot of that, but those are really, if managed well, and we can look at both the U.S. and Germany and Britain during the war at how they managed them, and they do manage them fairly well. And some of it is, with all the nations, to whatever degree they are rationing things. Sometimes, and I know Britain rationing because I've watched a documentary series on it in the past. Best, but in sort of details. In Britain, some of the stuff they're rationing is not because they don't have enough. Well, they don't have enough to meet everybody's demand, but it's not an essential thing. But what they don't want to have is a price spike. So they don't. And if IKB's around or whatever and knows some of this stuff a little better, I don't think they ration beer or tea. They keep that unrationed, but they ration spirits, whiskey and whatnot. And it's not that they don't necessarily have enough whiskey, or they're too worried that some rich person is going to buy up the whiskey and the poor people won't. They just don't want to see a price spike on a limited commodity. So yes, don't forget to like if you're watching this on YouTube. It does help the algorithm. So some of it is they just don't want economic price spikes. Some of it is like basic foodstuffs. They want to make sure everybody is well enough fed. So I'm looking at Britain, and this is more with Germany. In the U.S., they ration things like gasoline. They ration gasoline in the U.S. The U.S. is drowning in gasoline. The U.S. Has no problem. And I'm not just talking oil here. I'm talking gasoline. The U.S. has absolutely no problem delivering enough gasoline to everybody who wants possible gasoline. They could just start, having big, huge pipelines spill gasoline out into the, streets or the ocean and go, hey, we got plenty of gasoline. See, here it's just flowing like water. And it's going to flow like water forever. And the U.S. could do that. Why do they ration gasoline? Because they don't have rubber or enough rubber for the war effort. It's not because they don't have gasoline, it's because they don't have rubber. How do you keep people from using up rubber? Well, rubber, one of the major consumable uses of it is in car tires, and they wear out. They've gotten a lot better technology in rubber tires now versus back then, but they wear out, and a lot faster than they do today. So what they wanted to do was again, want and need are two different things. They want to have all of the commercial trucking that needs rubber to drive, trains were still the primary. Highways were almost unknown, or at least, they had, like Route 66 did exist. There's an old TV show, did exist before World War II, but those are like one lane each way roads that aren't anything like the Autobahn or modern highways that are, banked and set up to be driven fast on. These are just, and they're sometimes called highways back then, definitely, but these are just connecting roads that are paved, that are, major connecting routes. But they're not like what in the West we call them freeways, because you don't pay tolls on them, or Autobahn type highway things. They're nothing like that. That basically doesn't exist in the United States at any scale. I'm not going to say it doesn't exist, period. I'm saying it at any scale, it doesn't exist. The Pasadena Freeway is built post-war. It's more Santa Monica area here, not Santa Barbara, Santa Monica. It's coming in from Pasadena into LA here. See, Pasadena mountains. You don't have TRE installed, or you'd have not TRE, California Province Picture Mod that I made. It gives a lot of these historical photos for their regions. So those don't exist yet. But there is still a lot of trucking going on, not so much interstate trucking like we think of it. Oh, sure, around densely packed places around here. It's mostly rail, but still local communications. Hello, Crazy Warrior Cat fan, how you doing? So it's mostly like in and around with a, city or local regional areas. There's a lot of trucking. They want to keep that going, and they want to keep, they maybe need to keep that going, but they want to keep a lot of people for their productivity, shall we say. not always war or associated, but for their productivity, need to be able to drive a car around or a truck on a farm or whatever. They want to keep that going, and they want to keep general civilian population to be able to drive their cars once in a while. Maybe to work every day, but let's carpool. Let's ride share. Let's do things like that. So they want to keep that going, but they don't want to use up too much rubber. So they set up the rationing system in the U.S. for gasoline. And if you had a job that is war related, that part of the job you needed to drive your car around, you got a lot of gas rationing stamps. You still had to pay for the gas, and maybe your job paid you money, or maybe the job paid for the gas, but you still had to pay the gas, but you got lots of rationing stamps for it. If you're just, hey, I own a private car, I could take and there were a lot more in the past. They got rid of the ones in LA, though they built new ones since. A lot more of, light rail type transit systems, some underground, some above ground, some just above ground. Sort of kind of means in a lot of these cities suspended above ground in the US, not just on the ground, but some on the ground, that you might be able to take that to and from your work and walk a bunch, but still go that, but be able to have a car and go on a weekend picnic once in a while or something. They want to keep that going, but they want to radically reduce your driving habits. So they give you minimal amounts of rationing, gasoline rationing, and you could save up the rationing coupons to then be able to get enough gas for it. So it isn't that particular one. Rationing is to save rubber. Other rationing that they're doing in the U.S. is price rationing. It's not necessarily availability entirely. Some of it is non-competitive. They want to get supplies for the military and the Navy and whatnot. But that is a way to keep people from spending money. A lot of times, the rationing, including things like cloth rationing. They're doing that to keep people from spending money so that people invest money in war bonds. I know this is still the short talk on money in World War II, and I've done various versions of this before. And so all of this does have a massive effect years down the road to the economies that aren't wrecked simply by being bombed and stomped out of existence, but just like the U.S. being disrupted, even though it's not being attacked militarily. But it doesn't have, in my opinion, significant economic effect, as into the effectiveness of the amount of supplies needed or other modifiers like we can see up here. It would have, in my opinion, and I agree with, they do have the ability to ration to then get more resources. Any national unity and national support kind of things like that, morale. So those kind of effects, yes, but not in an economic effect, in my opinion, during the war. So I totally disagree with the money situation. So that's why I feel happy to cheat this in, because it's part of the reason we're looking at it. Now, why is this green here I was asked earlier on, I know, in Britain? Well, if you didn't know, during World War II, Britain allowed the United States, I'm trying to use the words correctly here, Britain allowed the United States to build a lot of bases in Britain of various types. Sort of famously, air bases to eventually, to bomb Germany and whatnot. And although they were generally speaking, not given the idea of extraterritoriality and the idea of like American ownership, but they were effectively American reservations, meaning the policing was done, especially if it didn't associate with a British citizen, done by the Americans. And because there's, what is it? Forsyth's War or whatever, a British sort of detective series set and shows some of his conflicts with some of the Americans going on. So, you know, they're not quite extraterritoriality, but sort of functionally that way. The problem, so there are sort of little, you know, lots of bases that are sort of, in essence, become sort of temporary American property run and administered by the Americans. Well, this game, the AI, the Americans may build a lot of bombers and fighters and everything else, but if it isn't controlled by America, the Americans don't seem to, the AI does not seem to be very aggressive at going after Germany. So they'll stack up their bombers and see if there's any bombers within, or any enemy territory within bomber range from American air bases. And there won't be. So what Black Ice's solution is to sort of give this little area and make sure there's a huge amount of, I think these are all level 10 air bases, high level of flak guns and coastal defense and radar, in the hopes, and it has been shown to be the case, that the Americans will send bombers and will decide to bring in an invasion force into one of these ports, because they could invade German-held territory from the, you know, range of some of these ports. So this is to help the AI. This, I think, only happens if America is AI, that they get this little bit of territory. They also get a similar sort of thing out here in Australia, and another one over here in Australia. And it was sort of that kind of way in little sort of base control situations. So that's why you have the green there. Right, let's go back to North Africa. Well, okay, so we have now won here. We have beaten a British division. Well, the British invasion of 3 divisions, I should say, and that is a good thing. And that is with me having sent all 6 of the Panzer divisions that we had down to Spain, and I sent 2 back up here that have gotten here by now, but we'll see about that. Right. Well, I think we're going to keep this from going too long, and we're going to save. And we're going to end the episode, not the live stream. Oh, no, we already have one. I'll do this again, just to make sure. Not the live stream, so you guys just hang loose if you want to stay around. But all the rest of you, thank you so much for making this far. I hope my talks on economies are interesting, informative. If you have anything you want to say, corrections, whatever, please post them below. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.